Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess, where first we just want to say we're sorry we didn't get an episode out last week. Feels like maybe about once a year we miss a week. And that was last week. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, Ange, other than we got through the trial, and that was what our last podcast was about, was the verdict. And things, we took the kids on vacation, big family trip with your mom and dad like we do, trying to decompress and doing the best we can. But there were also a lot of heavy things that we were dealing with last week. And so it didn't happen. We tried to focus on ourselves and our family.
Yeah, there was a couple times where it was like, okay, we should record the podcast tonight. And then I couldn't. I just didn't have it in me and the energy. We want to make sure that we bring the right focus and the right message to our listeners. And I think we just needed that week off.
Yeah, we were on vacation, so we might as well take it from everything. That's kind of what happened. But we are back this week. And the fact of the matter is, you've written a beautiful blog post in the last couple of weeks that we'll talk about a little bit later on in this episode. We've seen lots of signs from Hallie over the last couple of weeks that are always super welcomed. But just to start, I think one of the most obvious things we can say is that we live in a really divided world.
Yeah, whether it's the politics of Democrat or Republican or pro-gun, anti-gun, city, country, faith, believers, non-believers, leaders, followers, like everyone feels a divide. Hell, I feel like my life is divided of this before Hallie and after Hallie. And so you put yourself out there on social media to be passionate about your mission, and you take the risk of opening yourself up for other people's opinions. We live in a free world, and that's the beautiful part of it, is people can say what they think. And I think for us, I'm very passionate about women and their self-worth, and passionate about narcissism, and we've shared a ton of our grief journey, and even just blending our families, how incredibly difficult that is. Hell, even when you get divorced, there's divide, right? There's people have to take sides and all of that. So definitely understand that. And it's also okay that people don't understand our side of it. We can appreciate that and understand that there's a divide.
I think that's a great way to say it, is that no one's ever going to see 100% eye to eye on any topic, much less something like what we're dealing with and going through right now. And with that being said, I think it's very clear that it's easy to tell who has lost a child and who has not lost a child. Fair to say?
Oh, totally. And that's not something that we can ever explain. There was definitely last week a ton of social media posts around, both sides of the verdict and what happened, and people not agreeing with my voice and my message, and that's okay. A lot of statements like, well, he loved her and we should just move on, and somehow thinking that makes the accountability and what happened, it should just be okay. And I will never be able to make people understand what the depth of pain it is to lose a child. You just can't imagine. And I think our brains protect us from being able to imagine that. And I could try to explain it till I'm blue in the face, and it's not going to matter because people don't understand. And that's a level of acceptance for us to know that's just a situation. And I actually would say I never thought when I was younger who I would be today. Like, I also think you can't imagine who you would be in your 40s when you're young. And when I was younger, and I think we all go through this, especially women, I thought that acceptance and fitting in was the thing to do. And I think we all, to a certain level, we fear facing opposition. We fear being judged. We fear being rejected. I think everybody feels that and has a fear for that. But I think as you grow older and you have different life lessons that you're faced with, and your chosen experiences and your not so chosen experiences, that you learn that being small or being quiet about things that you're passionate about is detrimental to who you are. And you can try to keep peace and you can try to please everybody, but you end up, when you do that, you create a war inside of yourself. And so I'm just going to say, like, I'm not going to ever apologize for my voice and for ensuring that women understand their worth and their value, even if it makes other people uncomfortable, even if it makes people that are related to me uncomfortable. And I think the pain that is felt in our family makes people uncomfortable, and they don't want to hear or try to empathize or understand what that means. And I think when the world tries to make you small, you should expand. And ironically, I came across that the other day on my feed. I think things are fed to us for
They
whatever
are
reason
totally
on
fed.
social.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the timing of it. And that was the statement: when the world wants you to be small, you expand. And I'm like, how ironic is that? Because I feel like there's definitely a divide and people want a little bit of the quiet and silence our voice a little bit. And ironically, that was Hallie's one word for 2022 was expand.
Yeah. I feel like it's one of those things where, what this has allowed is for you to expand relationships that you never could have imagined all over the world with this podcast, and to start meeting other mamas that have gone through the same pain that you've gone through, to connect and to build those relationships. And that's not keeping yourself small. That's expanding and sharing your heart. And again, as we've talked about, being the buffalo, that's you running back into the storm for other people, and us doing the best that we can do in that scenario for all families that are going through the loss of a child, which again, if you've not done it, you don't want to do it. There's not one person that's listening or that wants to criticize that would actually trade places with us. There's not
Oh,
one
hell
person that
no.
would do that. Not one. So I would just say that before, everyone's entitled to your own opinion. Most of the time, if you haven't lost a child, it's just in this scenario towards us and our family, it's not super valid because we're not comparing apples to apples.
I'm not going to spend the time and energy to try to explain or justify the why behind a lot of what we have experienced. But I would just say to our listeners too, like, if you are in a situation where you want to speak your truth, but you're afraid, people are going to naturally, when the chips fall, they're just naturally going to take sides. And I think you have to prepare yourself for that. Make sure you have a firm foundation in your beliefs and know that the right people are going to be around you. And the other thing that naturally happens too is that you're going to lose connections with people as you expand. Your box gets bigger and their box stays smaller. And so I was talking to a good friend the other day about this, because I think everyone goes through it at some stage in their life, right? Big or small. You go through stages where the people sitting around your table changes. And that's hard no matter what your situation is. But we were talking about, like, those are God moves. God separates you from people you thought you should have had connections with. And this happens to everybody. And you could be a 13-year-old girl or a 46-year-old woman. Those, embrace it. Like, those are God moves. And those seats at the table move and new people come in and join your table. And you have to be okay getting out of your comfort zone and being uncomfortable in that growth for you to grow. And I think a lot of times people's immediate reaction to discomfort, because this topic and what happened in the last couple of weeks is uncomfortable for people. It's uncomfortable for the community, right? It
Yeah.
makes people uneasy. And I think our immediate reaction is to retract versus really reevaluating our thoughts. And I've done that a ton. Like, I have reassessed and reevaluated and checked myself. And I've reached out to mentors and, different people in my life that I trust to make sure that I'm speaking the truth into what's part of my heart and soul. So I think just know that. That doesn't mean that it's hard when you lose connections with people. It's always great to make new friends, but it's hard to let go of who you thought you should be or was connected to.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And it is what you said a minute ago. It's like people are going to switch seats at the table, a little bit circle of life, right? You're always going to meet new mentors, new friends, new younger people that bring things into your life. And you have to be okay with that. And that's part of growth mindset that we talk about so much on this podcast ever since we began it almost 3 seasons ago. And so having that growth mindset allows us to continue to move forward and expand the box. And as we mentioned earlier, like, it's allowed you to meet a lot of really beautiful mamas with broken hearts and really speak into their souls.
Yeah, I definitely feel like my sails of my boat and the direction I'm going and my focus has been completely readjusted, and it has removed others. But I think it's trusting God that He's making the moves for you. It's that quote, like, God doesn't cause pain without allowing something new to be born. And we were going through a lot of this challenging stuff a week or two ago as like the aftermath of the verdict. And I did write that blog post of like, there's two families involved, right? And while there's a lot of similarities between the families, in that both families are going through a lot of pain, so I will never discount that. So it's two families struggling. There's two sides to be taken. We both want to protect our kids. We both are uncertain about the future. We both pray to God for help. But there is a stark difference in that they can still hug their child. They can still talk to their child. They were there when their child took his first breath, and they don't have this soul crushing memory of their son taking his last breath. Like, I replay that every day. I replay her moments of her life. And that's, if you've lost a child, like, that's your way of keeping them alive. And so they don't have that. They don't have their son's ashes on their dresser. And he still has his whole life ahead of him. I mean, we all make mistakes and we all have to navigate that and live with it. But the part that he gets to do is he gets to live with it. And I can't say that about Hallie. Like, she's gone, her life here is done. And so, like, that fuels my mission to speak the truth and raise awareness about gun safety. And no matter what, there has to be accountability for people's actions, or why are we even living in this world, right? Like, so many people like, well, he didn't do it on purpose. And, my response is, right. Like, that's not the definition of involuntary manslaughter. It's the crime of killing another person unlawfully, but unintentionally. And, like I said, while it's super devastating for that person, our authorities and our system's supposed to protect us. And so I can appreciate the other side, but I also can appreciate there's no way that they could even possibly understand what this feels like, because I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy ever. And I don't hate him. I don't wish him ill will. I hate the choices that he made. I hate that this is my life and my kids' life and our family's life. But a beautiful life was lost. And I don't know, you just feel like you're not normal after you've lost a child. Like, it does feel like you're on an island and people won't understand you. But I will say that grief does clear your mind, and that you know what matters, really matters. And it's not opinions of others. It's not shrinking because you're afraid of the judgments or anything like that. So that was a lot of our processing. And last week we're on vacation and we're just trying to regroup, to breathe, to process. And our girl just keeps showing up for us.
Shocking.
She's all powerful. Like, I had one mom say, gosh, I really look for signs now, because you talk about signs all the time. And I share them, and people are just like, oh my gosh, like I can't make this up. So she definitely came in strong. One crazy one that happened the week of her trial. I will say, I feel like Hallie shows people signs that genuinely like care about us and are connected to, like, people maybe we don't even know, but they reach out or they listen to her podcast. Like, I feel like she knows when people are really connected to us, and then shows them signs. So it's so cool when it happens. But I had one of our listeners, I call her the cupcake lady, because she makes amazing cupcakes. And she made cupcakes for a wedding, and we have special events. I always have her make cupcakes, and such a faithful, beautiful soul. And she sends me this text, and they are car shopping in St. Louis. And it's a business card of a sales guy with the absolute craziest name. His name is Phoenix Phillips.
Oh my gosh.
Phoenix is the horse. Phoenix is what Hallie turned into in Feathers Matter at the end. And his last name's Phillips. The other thing on the business card is his number was 314 something 7777.
Oh my gosh.
Like, what? How insane. So she sends me a text. She's like, oh my God. Like, I looked down his business card. We're shopping in St. Louis for a car. And she's like, I hope Hallie's going to find me a good car.
Right.
I mean, insane. Who has that name? Phoenix Phillips.
That is crazy. Yeah, that's so a first crazy. For sure. Wow. Well, and then we got on the airplane with your mom and dad. They've never flown before, so a big deal. They're nervous about it. Obviously, everybody's talking to Hallie about it, praying to God that everything's going to be okay. And you look up from your seat, and what did you see? Unbelievable.
Yeah, so like 2 rows up, this guy has his hat on backwards. So had he not had his hat on backwards, I would never have noticed his hat. I actually noticed it and didn't say anything, because I feel like sometimes our kids get annoyed because we're always like, oh, that was Hallie, or here's the sign for Hallie. So I'm like, I'm not saying anything. And actually Chase leaned over. He was a row over sitting with my dad. He leans over. He goes, did you see that guy's hat? And I'm like, I did see it. But it says HP on it. So I take a picture of it, because Mom couldn't see it where she was sitting. And I'm like, hey, do you think Hallie's with us? Look at this guy's hat. And she's like, oh my gosh. Well, the wilder part of that even is I posted on my story, and that the day before I was in St. Louis for work. And so I was in a meeting with a lady that I work with, and I was talking to her all about what had just happened with the trial the day before. So this is on Thursday. Wednesday was the verdict. This is our life. Like, you don't get time to just take off, right? Like, we have the verdict on Wednesday. Thursday, I'm in an all-day meeting in St. Louis. So I'm, talking to her about it. I have this whole army at work. It's beautiful, like people that care about our family. And anyway, so I was talking to her about it. So I post the hat on my story, and this same lady comments and says, that's my daughter's volleyball team. Do you want me to get you a hat? Like, what?
Unbelievable.
So crazy.
It is unbelievable.
But you had one too.
We might have shared this. Yeah, I think we might have shared this last week in our episode.
I don't think we did.
If not, it's new. And if you didn't hear it, here we go.
Uh-huh.
But the day of the verdict, it was nerve wracking for everyone. And I was out on a walk on the trail, and there's all this greenery and trees, but there's one tree in front of me, and it is as dead as can be. Big tree. Everything on it's dead, except I'm getting squawked at by this bird. And I look at the very top of it was this oriole. And, they're black, they're orange. You don't see a lot of them in Missouri. I have this year for some reason. And I just thought, this is really weird. Like, this one tree has this oriole that's squawking at me. All the other trees are full of leaves and beautiful. And so I look up, like, because I think birds have a lot of symbolism. And so I look up the meaning of an oriole, and it was basically said, the start of a new season in life where you're about to turn the page from one chapter to the next, and you're going to start having good things happen, and positive things are about to start coming your way. Then, of course, later that day, we got a very positive verdict. And I just felt like that oriole was meant to be there to squawk at me that day, make a little bit of noise for sure.
Get your attention.
100%. Sure did too. And then we were sitting on the beach. I've never seen this before. We looked up, sunshine. There was always some clouds in the sky, no rain. And up in the cloud, like attached to the cloud, was like a rainbow, but it wasn't like it didn't arc. It didn't have the arc of a rainbow. Like, it was just like these.
It was just in the clouds. It looked like it was just stuck in the clouds.
And it was beautiful.
And it was there for a long time.
Yeah, it didn't come and go. Like, I feel like 20 plus minutes it was there. And as it went on, like, some of it was like very orange and kind of looked like a feather almost.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of blues.
It was wild. I think
we were mesmerized by it.
I think that was the same day. So the beaches are packed. I mean, they're like 4 rows deep of chairs. And that day, we didn't get out there until later in the afternoon. Normally, we try to put chairs out early and sort of save a spot and then go to the beach. And we didn't that day. And my mom and I think Summer and Lexi were going to the beach. So I didn't have anybody else with them. We were coming later. And my mom was walking to the beach, and she's like, all right, Hallie, find us some seats. And so my mom walks to the very front, the very, where the beach meets the ocean, because she wants to be right there, not 3 rows back. And this sweet lady was like, hey, are you looking for chairs? We're leaving. You can just have the spot right in front of us. So we're right there. And she's like, oh, okay, thanks, Hal. We just talked to her all the time. I mean, you guys had signs too whenever you went fishing. You went on a little fishing excursion.
I took Chase and Dane deep sea fishing. And I've had this captain before when I took Carter on the trip last fall. And he is in the special forces, and took a picture of him and Chase together. And you immediately are like, what? Look at his hat. And he was in like the 7th Infantry of Special Forces. I had a big 7 right there. So I was like, all right, I love it. Like, bless this fishing trip today. And then we're fishing for mahi-mahi. They're everywhere for a couple of hours. And right away, we catch 7 of them. And then we keep throwing in, and nothing's biting anymore. And the guy's like, I'm really sorry. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, he's like, I guess they could be full, but there's so many. Like, one of them would catch. And in my mind, I was like, no, because we've caught 7. And that's where this is staying. We're staying at 7 mahi-mahi, and that's how it's going to be. And that's how it ended up.
And your picture that was pretty cool. Funny. Good thing you didn't catch more, or you guys would have had to put more in your mouth, because they'd take a picture and they're holding up the 7 fish. So obviously 1 in each hand for the 3 boys is 6. And so Chase takes the 7th one and like bites it. And it's hanging out of his mouth. Like,
well, the guy goes, who's going to put the 7th one in their mouth? And me and Dane were like,
he suggested it?
Yeah, we were like, no way. And Chase like, I'll do it. And we're like, okay. Ugh, gross.
Gosh.
But made for a funny picture for sure. So, yeah. So
yeah, definitely. We had another sign this week, yesterday, actually. So we're headed to Denver this weekend for Bailey's wedding. So Bailey's been on our podcast before. She was Hallie's ICU nurse, but also Lexi and Carter's first cousin. And so we're excited to go there and be part of that beautiful moment for them. And she texted us yesterday and was like, hey, Sam, which is her fiance, is getting his hair cut and his eyebrows waxed. He's getting ready for the wedding. And she's like, I never go with him. And I went with him. And she's like, he's, in the chair getting his hair cut. And I look up and I look at this sign above him. And she's like, I just got chills. And it's a sign that just says, have the day that you deserve. Like, what?
Very Hallie. Couldn't be more Hallie. That's
Very
right.
Hallie.
That's crazy.
I am looking forward to this weekend, though, because I do feel like Hallie's going to be ever present with us. And so we're unpacking, repacking, and heading out again.
Travel. That's what we do. So, but we do have a podcast for this week. So here we go.
We do.
Yeah, we'll get this all edited and ready to go while we travel. And then hopefully we'll have some great stories to share next week. But in the meantime, proud of you for continuing to stay strong in your beliefs and your fight for Hallie and for women everywhere. You fought for women since the day I met you 5 years ago. That's not new. You oftentimes made men uncomfortable based on the fact that you supported women so strongly and fervently. And so that's not any different, but it is, obviously more personal now with everything that we've gone through. But continue to be super proud of you. And if you haven't read Angie's blog on it, I think it's a great depiction of both sides. It's fair. So would love it if you would do that. That's on our Facebook pages, Instagram, all of those things. And if you like what you hear, you can share it. We appreciate that very much on all of our platforms. Rate us, all those great things. Anything you want to add?
No, I think the only thing is just recapping. If you take away one thing from the episode today is like, if you have something to say and you're afraid of judgments, don't let the world silence you.
It's a powerful quote. Very powerful. That is it for this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. As always, we hope you have a wonderful week. God bless.